Once you've found all the information you're going to need for your research paper and you've completed your notes, your next step is to create an outline. To do that, you're going to want to go to Google Classroom and use the assignment here, outline a social commentary. Uh, that's where you're going to do the assignment. You don't want to start some random Google Doc and share it with me, because then I get dozens of different files sent to me, and it's up to me to organize them. Use this, that way they're all organized together. In your booklet, you have this page, Outline Directions. That walks you through step by step, but I'm going to show you how to do one in this video so you get a bit more visual. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure everything's set up properly. You want to be Times New Roman, font size 12, and you want to be double spaced. After that, you want to create a heading, which will be your name, your teacher's name, the date, and the assignment. Then you're going to want to go down a little bit and create a title, which could just be the title of the work that you're going to do, the photograph, the song, or the painting. And then go down a couple spaces and you want your thesis. Now your thesis should capture how your work of art was reflective of the time, how your work of art spoke to the time that it was created. So for mine, I'm doing Mississippi Goddam by Nina Simone. My thesis says, Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddam captured the anger and frustration of black Americans as white supremacists used increasingly violent tactics to stop the progress of the civil rights movement. So that's what her song was meant to do. It was meant to be angry about what was happening, the murders that were occurring. So you want to do something similar for your work of art. How did your work of art capture the American mentality at the time? Okay, and so once you have your title, your thesis, you're ready to start the outline. So again, go down a couple spaces, and then up here, it has different kinds of outlines. As it says right here, you want to pick this one. And that starts you out at a Roman numeral I for 1. So nothing fancy here. Introduction. Then you hit return. And once you hit return, it automatically goes down at the same level. You want it to go in. Now there's two ways you could do this. The way I like is to go up here and use these two buttons to move in and out. So I'm going to move in. That makes it an A. Again, not getting fancy. You don't actually have to type your paper in your outline. You're just giving the main ideas that you're going to start with and go through as your paper goes on. So A, general opener. B, thesis. And I have my thesis right here, but this is where my thesis will go. It will go at the end of my introduction. And then I'm ready to start a new paragraph. But when I hit return, it takes me down to C. Now, I don't want to C, so I need to go back out. And that brings me out to the Roman numeral 2. And this one is historical background. But I'm going to be a bit more specific because mine is about the civil rights movement. That's what was happening in the 60s when Nina Simone wrote this song. So now I want to go in. So again, I use these and I go in. Now if you look at my notes over here, these are my notes for the historical background paragraph. What I'm going to have to do is decide what order they should go in. Because I took these notes as I found them. I wasn't putting them in order as I went. So I've got to determine which makes sense logically to go first, which makes sense logically to go second, and which makes sense logically to go third. Don't just assume the order they're in is just fine. Like, think about the order of the ideas and what would make the most logical sense. Now, it just so happens that the order that these make sense to go in is the order they're in. I just got lucky. So the first detail I need to do is this one. So the quote says, televised scenes of children campaigning against rigid segregation, being bitten by alsatians, which I think are a dog, and knocked off their feet by water fired with enough power to rip bark off a tree caused international outrage. So in other words, all the things that this sentence described, they were happening on the news. Black Americans were marching for their rights, and they were being beaten, scared, and hit with fire hoses. So I don't need to put this whole thing for A. I just need to sum it up. It's an outline. It's supposed to be brief. So I'm just going to say racial violence became more public as it was on the news. Racial violence was something people used to just hear about. Now they were seeing it on the news. Next one. Evers, Medgar Evers, was subjected to threats as the most visible civil rights leader in the state, he was shot to death in June of 1963. She mentions Medgar Evers in the song. So I'm just going to say Medgar Evers murdered. And then C, Evers was murdered just 9 hours after John Kennedy's speech on national television in support of civil rights. So one of the things that scared white supremacists was that the President of the United States was coming out publicly in support of the civil rights movement. So I'm just going to say Kennedy supporting civil rights. And now I've got my first paragraph. Now again, if I hit return, it's going to take me down to D. But I need to move out to the third paragraph. And that would be Nina Simone biography. And then in. And I can, go through this whole thing like her birth. Like I don't need to put anything more than that for the outline. Musical beginnings, etc. And that's how you go through it. So you don't have, I had people in previous classes who were copying and pasting entire quotes into their outline. You don't need to do that. It's supposed to be brief. But this is where you, in front of your own eyes, construct the organization of your paper. You decide what ideas should go first and what should go last and all that stuff. So once you finish your outline, go back to Google Classroom, go to the assignment, hit submit, and then you're ready to start your paper, but we'll talk about that later. Mindeman out.